The Swaggart ministry, known for its prominence within the Pentecostal Christian community, has always been a family affair, with the Swaggart name carrying immense weight. At the heart of the ministry is the Family Worship Center, a beacon of faith that has served as a gathering place for thousands over the years. However, in recent times, an undeniable tension has surfaced within the ministry. What began as subtle shifts in behavior and whispered rumors has now exploded into public view, with family members and key figures involved in a highly visible, emotional, and divisive conflict. Gabriel Swaggart, one of the ministry's young leaders, has finally broken his silence, revealing the struggles between him and his father, Donnie Swaggart. This conflict, which has shaken the foundation of the ministry, has left the church grappling with uncertainty over its future. The signs of growing tension within the Swaggart ministry were subtle at first. Longtime church members began to notice small but telling shifts in the relationship between Donnie and Gabriel, the once close father and son duo, who used to embrace each other warmly after services and openly praise one another, were now keeping their distance. These subtle changes did not go unnoticed. The congregation, especially those who had been part of the ministry for years, started to wonder whether something deeper was going on. The lack of physical affection and the strained interactions between the two were evident. Donnie and Gabriel, who had once been symbols of unity and strength, were now like strangers in the same room. Church members quietly whispered to one another in the hallways, "Did you see the look Donnie gave Gabriel? Why wasn't Gabriel on stage today?" At first, these were dismissed as fleeting moments or simply the result of exhaustion. But as time passed, the tension became impossible to ignore. Worship leaders, media team heads, and staff were increasingly affected. Schedules began changing without prior notice. On several occasions, Donnie would cancel sessions where Gabriel was scheduled to speak, and some claim to have seen Donnie leave the sanctuary early when Gabriel took over the pulpit. It was clear that something was brewing behind the scenes, but no one dared to speak it out loud. The smiles between the two remained, but the warmth had faded, leaving an unspoken gap that grew wider by the day. The tension, which had been building for months, came to a head during a leadership meeting intended to be a routine discussion about the direction of the ministry. It was supposed to be a simple gathering of key figures, including worship leaders, media heads, and family advisors. Donnie, as always, entered with authority, commanding respect, while Gabriel came prepared with notes and a vision to modernize the church's ministry. Gabriel shared his ideas with enthusiasm, emphasizing the need to connect with the younger generation by modernizing worship practices and introducing new, fresh voices into the pulpit. But when Gabriel suggested rotating the preaching schedule to provide newer pastors with more opportunities to speak, Donnie's demeanor shifted drastically. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and responded sharply, "That's not how we built this ministry." The words cut through the room, and the meeting took a turn that no one had anticipated. What followed was a public argument between father and son that would shake the core of the ministry. Annie, speaking with authority and emotion, reminded everyone that the church had been built on tradition and legacy, and he felt Gabriel's ideas were undermining the very foundation of their work. Gabriel, frustrated and hurt, passionately responded, "But if we don't grow, we'll lose the next generation." The room fell silent as the two men exchanged pointed words. This was no longer about projects or programs. It was about the very soul of the ministry. As the argument escalated, Donnie stood up, declaring, "This isn't how we do things," and walked out of the meeting, leaving Gabriel sitting alone, his vision now feeling more like a burden than a calling. The tension, which had once been a mere whisper, was now fully exposed, and everyone in the room knew the divide between father and son was real. As the tension between Donnie and Gabriel deepened, attention turned to Frances Swaggart, the matriarch of the Swaggart family. Known for her quiet strength and unwavering support of her husband, Jimmy, and later Donnie, many believed Frances would be the key to reconciling the rift between father and son. However, instead of stepping in with her usual grace, Frances remained silent. Her quiet disapproval of Gabriel's new direction became apparent behind the scenes. It was whispered that she was uncomfortable with Gabriel's push to modernize the church. She believed in preserving the sacred traditions of the ministry, which had been built over decades of prayer and sacrifice. Though Frances never publicly criticized Gabriel, her body language and private conversations suggested she was firmly in support of Donnie's more traditional approach. In fact, some even claimed that Frances had a private conversation with Gabriel, advising him to remember where he came from. To Gabriel, this felt like a rejection, not only of his ideas but of him as a person. He had hoped for her support and blessing, but instead he was met with silence. A silence that spoke louder than any words ever could. Her reluctance to step in and mediate between the two men only deepened the divide. To many it seemed as though Frances had chosen a side, and that side was with the past. As the divide between Donnie and Gabriel became more visible, the impact was felt throughout the ministry. The once tight-knit family that had worked together harmoniously was now fractured. Staff, volunteers, and congregation members finding themselves caught in the middle. The ministry that had once been a place of unity was now a battlefield of silent alliances and divided loyalties. Staff members were forced to choose sides, and the pressure was palpable. Some stood firmly by Donnie, believing in his traditional leadership style, while others, particularly the younger staff members, saw something new and exciting in Gabriel's vision for the church's future. The worship team, a vital part of the ministry, also felt the strain. Song choices became a point of contention, and schedules changed without warning. Rumors circulated that staff members who aligned themselves with Gabriel were being marginalized or punished in subtle ways. The ministry had descended into a quiet civil war where even the most mundane decisions carried heavy political weight. What once felt like a holy calling on Sunday mornings now felt like walking on eggshells, unsure of who to trust and what side to take. The moment everything changed came during a live Sunday service. Gabriel was scheduled to speak after the worship, but in a bold move. He set his prepared notes aside and began speaking straight from the heart. Calm at first, his voice soon grew full of emotion as he spoke about the need for change within the ministry. He talked about how faith must evolve, how the church should reach beyond its walls, and how clinging too tightly to the past could hinder God's work. His words were gentle but pointed, and one line in particular made the room shift. Sometimes, what holds us back isn't the enemy outside, he said. It's the tradition we refuse to question. The congregation fell silent, and behind the scenes, staff members looked to Donnie, who was seated off camera. His expression was tight, and within minutes, he stood up and walked out of the sanctuary. The tension that had been building for months was now out in the open, and the world was watching. Social media erupted with speculation. Some praised Gabriel for being bold and prophetic, while others criticized him for disrespecting his father. Inside the church, however, the message was clear. Gabriel had gone off script. There was no turning back. In the wake of the live broadcast, it was clear that something had to be done to address the public rift. A private family meeting was arranged with the hope of bringing Donnie and Gabriel together in a safe space to heal their relationship. But from the moment the meeting began, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Frances opened with a prayer, but even her voice trembled with emotion. Donnie spoke first, expressing his hurt over Gabriel's actions, accusing him of betraying the trust of the ministry. Gabriel responded with pain, stating that he was tired of being treated like a child, constantly being told his ideas were wrong. The meeting, which had been meant to foster understanding, instead opened old wounds and escalated the conflict. When the meeting failed, the conflict inevitably spilled over into the public eye. Social media became flooded with rumors and cryptic posts. Fans of the ministry began to notice that Donnie and Gabriel had unfollowed each other on social media, signaling a deeper divide. The ministry, once a beacon of unity, was now being scrutinized like a reality show. Fans picked sides, speculating about everything from leadership styles to personal grievances. The Swaggart family's internal struggle had become a public spectacle, and neither Donnie nor Gabriel spoke out to clarify the situation, allowing the noise to grow louder. Debbie Swaggart, Donnie's wife and Gabriel's aunt, was heartbroken by the division within her family. As a peacemaker, she tried to reach out to both Donnie and Gabriel separately, encouraging them to forgive one another and find common ground. She even arranged a private retreat to give them the space to heal. But on the day of the retreat, neither man showed up. This failure to reconcile left Debbie devastated, and she expressed her disappointment in a poignant post, highlighting the painful reality that when silence replaces forgiveness, everyone loses. Despite her best efforts, the rift between father and son continued to widen. Donnie returned to the pulpit with renewed intensity, delivering a sermon about loyalty and betrayal. Though he never mentioned Gabriel by name, his words were unmistakable. Leaving the congregation to wonder how deep the wound really was, the atmosphere at the family worship center had irrevocably shifted. It was clear that the Swaggart family would never be the same. As the ministry moves forward, it seems that both Donnie and Gabriel will continue to lead, but no longer together. They appear on separate Sundays, speak with different tones, and walk separate paths within the ministry. For some, this division is heartbreaking, as it signals the end of an era. For others, it is a necessary evolution, a sign that the ministry must change in order to survive. Yet the tension between father and son remains unresolved, and the church waits to see if healing will come or if this rift will mark the beginning of a permanent split within the Swaggart legacy. The future of the family worship center and the Swaggart ministry itself is now uncertain, and only time will reveal what the future holds.